Mr. Mogul Money is back at it again, and by it, I mean once again providing consultation services free of charge to the platform that he now calls home. On a recent interview with Colin and Samir, also on YouTube, he once again delved into the topic of what kinds of features and what kinds of community aspects YouTube is currently still lacking compared to Twitch. Now, we've talked about this plenty of times before on this channel. It comes up every so often, especially when we're talking about these big name streamers and the platforms they choose to reside on, as there are still a lot of things that people love and expect from Twitch that they would like to see in YouTube that just aren't there. But in this particular interview, even though Ludwig himself has talked about this beforehand, he offers some insights that I think put a new and interesting spin on things that are well worth taking a look at. So without further ado, let's hear from the man himself.
I'm with YouTube, but I won't be shy. There's a list of problems, right? And there were fears before, and now there are problems I have to deal with currently. But it was things like they don't even have the ability to host or raid from a live stream. They don't have the ability to like gift subs, which I don't really care about, honestly. That's kind of good for me, but it's something they don't have for like other creators. Right. And there's a whole list of things that they don't have that Twitch does, quality of life things. Even how chat moves is a problem on YouTube.
Ask a dozen streamers what features they wish YouTube had, and you'll get 24 different answers, but a few will come up for just about everybody. And they're all things Ludwig mentions here: gifted subs, raids, hosting, all mechanical features that would be hard to call easy or difficult to implement from an outside perspective. Who knows what the behind the scenes code looks like, but certainly things that one would imagine a tech giant among tech giants like Google will be able to figure out eventually. Despite this, we've seen quite a few content creators find their homes there, finding very lucrative contracts pulling them onto the platform, but they have a lot of positive things to say once they're there. And a couple of people who aren't the biggest names on the internet entirely have also found a lot of reasons to love YouTube as a streaming platform despite all the difficulties. Ludwig's next point, however, is a little bit more immaterial than the hard-set things like being able to gift subs, being able to perform raids or host. It's a little bit something that's harder to quantify and harder to nail down that YouTube may never be able to land or might be able to replace with something unique of their own, and that's the culture.
Yeah, Twitch has a godlike culture that these days can only be found in like TikTok. There's no real culture on YouTube. It's too big. There's no culture on like Instagram. It's mostly models. Twitch has this amazing culture where if you're in it for like even like a week, you start typing differently and you talk differently, and the community you're in is like its own little like bubble. And it's awesome. And that doesn't exist on YouTube when someone's just like clicking on a live stream and they just never seen one before.
Twitch culture is definitely unique, as many internet communities are, and there's no way to exactly duplicate that. Many have tried following the model of many a website. It never really works out. You can't just conjure something like that. It has to happen organically. That being said, I think the key here in what Ludwig mentions is the fact that YouTube feels too big, and this is something that we see consistently across communities. You don't really see a dedicated identity forming on something that is super wide. It has to be focused enough that it has an identity of its own. At a certain point, Twitch was only games. There was a time before just chatting, a time before music streams, a time before all other things, and it was just dedicated to playing games. And it's still mostly dominated by that, of course. But that narrow focus and that ability to hone in on things like that is what allowed the current community, for better and for worse, to grow into what it is today. YouTube is everything. YouTube is everywhere. YouTube is the de facto way to watch videos of any kind on the internet. And so it's even within these relatively niche streaming space compared to everything else, it doesn't quite have that community feel to it. And there's no real way to congregate to make that happen. Again, the format of how you move from one stream to another, the fact that, as Dr. Disrespect has mentioned himself for the streams, you don't really feel alive. There's nothing really going on when the stream turns off. There's no way to take that conversation and move it to somewhere else so people can keep talking, keep chatting, keep generating hype, keep enjoying each other and the space they share. Now, that is something YouTube could solve, something YouTube could do, but it's really difficult to say how they would make that happen unless possibly the streaming part of YouTube broke away from the rest of it and it was a website within a website. It had its own features, its own look, its own spaces that caters to trying to recreate not exactly the Twitch experience, but the streaming experience, the dedicated communities and spaces that people have come to know and love out of this modern era of live streaming. Even with the insight of big name streamers, especially considering that not all big name streamers agree, this is going to be a difficult question to answer, and I'm sure we'll be seeing slight improvements, big adjustments, and even some missteps plenty more times to come from YouTube, even from Twitch, who certainly has a lot of features people would like them to implement, like better customer service and easier ability to get money off of the platform. And of course, Facebook Gaming is continuing to try and make its own rise to the top as well. In one way or another, we are going to continue to see a lot of steps forward and a lot of steps back, but hopefully, as things get more and more advanced, we will find some new great communities pop up that will really make another platform finally feel like home and gives Twitch some real competition. Or maybe Twitch will rectify its issues and become once again the de facto place for streaming of all kind. For the time being, it's impossible to tell, but one way or another, when there is more news, when there are more streamers, of course, talking about this subject matter, I'll once again give you any novel thoughts. But for the time being, folks, how do you feel about it? I want to hear your novel thoughts, so drop a comment down below letting me know how you feel. Do you feel like YouTube needs to create something like Twitch's community, or do you feel like it's doing fine doing what it is? Do you feel like the lack of mechanical features is going to be resolved sometime in the future, and that will allow you to gain supremacy? Or do you think that possibly there's never really going to be one streaming platform that rules over all, and this space of having multiple competing services, multiple platforms vying for attention might be the way things balance out, with potentially YouTube, Facebook, and maybe even Twitch continuing to all occupy roughly around the same tier position once Facebook and YouTube catch up, so to speak. One way or another, let me know, and like I said, I'll let you know when there's more news, but that's all I've got for you right now. So once again, thanks for watching, much appreciated as always, and I will talk to you next time.